everybody, Mrs. Cantrell and I hope that you are really excited to work on another Canva assignment. But the whole idea behind this one is we want to see what it's like for you during this quarantine time. And we want you to make an infographic, which is information and pictures together to describe what you're doing during this time. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is start a brainstorming. Just like last time, you're going to want to draw, you want to sketch, you want to write out some ideas. Especially for this one, my biggest tip for you is to journal your quarantine activities. Try and limit them to 1 to 2 words because when you put them on the graph, you don't want a super long sentence next to whatever you're graphing. You want a short, concise idea. So over here, I've listed my common quarantine activities. Now, I didn't leave everything in here. Like originally I put coffee because I start every morning with coffee, but that's not really a big bulk of my time spent in quarantine. So I tried to list the most notable things. And you'll see that I have office hours Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. I chose my own advice up here and I only highlighted office hours. Going live with Mrs. Cantrell, puzzles, baking, cooking, sewing. I have everything that I'm spending my time doing. The next tip I have for you is to assign a percentage of time spent on each activity, but it also helps to list the actual time to figure out the percentage. So what I did here in the blue pen is I wrote out how long each week. I'm doing mine by week. Mrs. Cantrell did hers by day, I think. You can also do yours by month or just overall the whole time that we spent in quarantine, 5 weeks now, how long you spend on each thing. So right beside each activity, I listed how many hours I spend on each particular activity. Then what I did to figure out a percentage, because if I want a pie chart or a donut chart or something like that, I need to have a percentage. I added up all the hours that I have listed here, which is 85 hours. And then to get the percentage, I divided the hours and activities by the total hours. So you will see here, I took 5, divided it by 85, and that gave me 6%. My biggest percentage was sewing this week, which took up 23% of my time because I spent 20 hours on it. So 20 divided by 85 would be the 23%. So it's important that you kind of make sure you have a number that adds up to your activity. Something that can give you a little extra effort. This is something both Mrs. Cantrell and I did. I think it's really nice in an infographic to have lots of imagery and to have lots of graphics. So next to your activities, if you can think of imagery or symbols for each activity. So that's why you'll see next to some of my things, I put a puzzle piece, I put a mask that I've been sewing. I even put the Zoom screen that I do with my family game night. So it's going to be important to have a little bit more graphicness to your infographic, that you have symbols that represent that. Here's some other things that you want to think of. You're going to need to think of what graph or chart you want to represent your activities. It could be a bar graph, it could be a pie chart, it could be a donut chart, it could even be a Venn diagram. For instance, sleep and Netflix kind of overlap here, and what is in between? Well, Netflixing in bed. So you can do that type of thing. You can also do a timeline. I crossed it out for me because I'm not doing a day in the life, so I wouldn't like start at 8 a.m. and go till 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. I am doing a weekly one, so the timeline doesn't quite work for me, but if you wanted to show a day in your quarantine life, if your life every day is pretty similar, you could do that. For me, my day-to-day is not very similar. The other day I spent 10 hours on a mask, but then another day I spent 5 hours baking. So I kind of blocked mine by the week. Here's some other things you want to think about. Since part of this project is going to be to do a self-portrait, you need to think, how do you look most of the time? So for me, I put what my hair usually looks like, what my outfit usually looks like. I always have my dogs Bandit and Chesney around. You also want to think about what you want your quarantine title to be, since that's one of your requirements for this project. It could just be how I spend quarantine, and I have all these different ideas here of different titles to come up with. So that's what your brainstorming should look like. It should take you some time to journal out these ideas, and you want to have a pretty good idea of all the activities that you want sort of narrowed down, and you definitely should have an idea of the time you want to spend to go into your chart. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to be coming up with a composition or a layout. Remember that word composition just means how you're arranging all your different requirements. So I encourage you guys to do thumbnails. I did 4. I think 3 to 4 thumbnails are great. They're just a quick layout of the artwork. They're super sketchy. They're filled with notes and arrows. Please remember your requirements when you're doing your composition and layout. You must do a background, a self-portrait, a title, a graph and chart, and some sort of framed and matte elements behind these other things listed here. Couple tips for you if you've never seen or done infographics before. I would go to Google Images and search infographic. There are so many different ways to organize text and images. You can get a lot of inspiration from looking at infographics that already exist. I also have another tip of planning a color scheme. Mine's of course going to be rainbow, but maybe you want to do a limited color scheme. Maybe you want to do something neutral. Maybe you want to do something that includes all of your favorite colors. So you can see here I have 4 different formats. I have a square, a rectangle, a little bit of a wider rectangle, and I have a very skinny long rectangle. These are ones that I see on Pinterest a lot. I decided that my self-portrait in all these is going to have to do with baking, because that's what I've been spending a lot of time doing, and honestly it makes me extremely happy during this quarantine time. So you can see that I have all the requirements. In each one I have some sort of a background. I have where my self-portrait's gonna be. I have the way that the title's gonna be laid out, and you can see it's different in each one. I have my little graphs. Looks like I really liked the donut pie chart. And each picture that you notice, or each requirement up here, is kind of framed around something. So not only do I have my graph, I have something around that to make it pop forward from the background. So from here, I would choose which one of these or maybe I choose a combination, and I would go on to Canva and start creating. I can't wait to see what you all create.